The voicemail arrived at 2:14 in the morning, just late enough to feel wrong before it was even heard. The phone vibrated once on the nightstand, lit the room for a second, and went still again. When the owner checked it half awake, the notification seemed ordinary at first glance: one missed call and one new voicemail from an unfamiliar number. That was not unusual on its own. Wrong numbers, delayed spam, and silent calls happen to everyone. But the voicemail had a duration of 28 seconds, and the system had marked it as successfully delivered from a number the phone did not recognize. The decision to play it should have been simple. Instead, something about the timing made him pause. It was too late for ordinary business and too calm a notification for emergency. Still, curiosity won, and he pressed play. The first few seconds contained only room noise, faint electrical hum, distant movement, and the kind of silence that makes someone lean closer to a speaker. Then a voice began speaking in a low, controlled tone. It did not sound distorted or synthetic. It sounded close, direct, and tired in a very human way. The caller did not introduce themselves. They did not explain why they were calling. They said only a handful of phrases, separated by pauses long enough to make each one land heavily. "If this number reaches you, don't answer tomorrow." The line remained open another few seconds after that, long enough for the sound of a chair moving somewhere in the background. Then the message ended. No threat, no yelling, just a specific warning tied to a time that had not happened yet. The owner replayed the voicemail immediately, this time checking the call details while the audio ran. The number on screen was formatted correctly, tied to his country code and local area sequence, with nothing visually suspicious about it. That normality made the message worse. Scam calls often hide behind malformed routing or obvious spoofing. This did not. It looked like a real number inside the network. He tried calling it back, but the line did not fail in the usual way. Instead of reaching a disconnected message or voicemail box, the call attempt ended instantly, as if the network recognized the number but refused to complete the route. That subtle behavior was the first thing that pushed the event beyond a strange voicemail and into something that felt systemically wrong. The next morning, he did what most people wouldn't bother doing. He contacted a friend who worked in telecom provisioning, not network security, not customer service, actual number assignment and routing administration. At first, his friend treated it like a mild curiosity and ran the number through an internal tool expecting to find an ordinary carrier record. Instead, the result froze both of them. The number existed in pending allocation status only. It had not been released to any customer, office, business, or automated service. According to the provisioning record, the number would become active the following afternoon as part of a bulk block assignment to a small corporate telecom pool. In simple terms, the voicemail had come from a number that was real enough to be scheduled, but not real enough to belong to anyone. That fact alone should have reduced the incident to a technical anomaly, but it did the opposite. If the number had been inactive, then who or what had used it to leave the message? His telecom friend went deeper, pulling the timestamping and early routing metadata attached to the voicemail delivery. The call had not appeared as forged internet traffic or a generic spoof overlay. It had entered the system through a legitimate internal path associated with enterprise exchange infrastructure. That meant the network had not merely displayed the number incorrectly, it had processed the voicemail as if the number were already part of the live world. And yet the number's official existence still belonged to tomorrow. The content of the message became more unsettling once its timing was compared to the provisioning schedule. "Don't answer tomorrow" was no longer a vague warning. It now sounded like specific knowledge tied to the exact moment when that number would become active in the system. The owner and his telecom friend both realized the same thing at once.
The voicemail had not come from a dead line or a random ghost signal. It had come from a line with a future. That future had not arrived yet, but somehow the message had. That difference transformed the call from an odd event into a contradiction held together by real infrastructure. The network believed the number enough to deliver it before the calendar did. They decided not to report the voicemail broadly at first. Corporate telecom environments handle strange routing incidents quietly because most anomalies turn out to be migration bugs, duplicate pathing, or stale database references. The friend promised to watch the number assignment process the next day and check who or what ultimately received it. But curiosity made them continue analyzing the message. The audio background was cleaner than expected for a prank. There was no traffic, no TV noise, no obvious public environment. Instead, it sounded like an office after hours. Ventilation, chair movement, maybe paper once in the middle distance. The audio also carried no panic. That detail mattered. The caller didn't sound like someone making a desperate warning in real time. He sounded like someone leaving instructions with the calm of someone who already knew the warning would matter later. By afternoon, the number had been assigned exactly as the provisioning sheet predicted, to an unused desk line inside a mid-sized office suite leased by a logistics company on the other side of the city. The assignment itself was routine. New extensions were being activated floor by floor as the company prepared to occupy a recently renovated workspace. No employees had moved in yet. The office was still mostly empty, with desks, phones, and networking gear being installed in stages. That meant the number now belonged to a real physical telephone in a real location. The owner of the voicemail and his telecom friend drove there that evening with permission from the company's facilities manager, who agreed to let them inspect the line after hearing the general outline of the issue. The office was quiet, cold, and unfinished in the way newly prepared spaces often are. Monitors sat dark on desks, chairs remained pushed in, ceiling lights lit the open-plan floor in flat, indifferent rows. Near the back of the suite stood a cluster of newly assigned desk phones, and one of which now carried the number from the voicemail. It sat on a clean workstation with no personal items, no paperwork, and no sign anyone had used it yet. The friend checked the activation settings first. Everything was normal, the number was live, voicemail had not been configured yet. Outbound routing worked. But when he pulled the internal message record from the handset system, there was nothing stored locally. The voicemail that had arrived the night before had passed through the network without ever residing on the phone that now officially owned the number. Then the phone rang. Not loudly, not in some dramatic cinematic burst, just an ordinary ring in a room that should have been empty. All three men looked at it immediately. The display showed no caller ID. The facilities manager refused to touch it. The friend answered on speaker. There was only silence at first, not dead air, the slight living silence of an open line. Then the same voice from the voicemail spoke again. "You answered." The line stayed open long enough for everyone in the room to understand what they were hearing. Then came a final sentence, quiet and precise. "You weren't supposed to be there yet." The line disconnected before any reply could be formed. That second call altered the meaning of the first. The warning had not been abstract, it was literal. Someone or something knew the number would exist tomorrow, knew it would be answered, and knew the answer would happen in a physical place not yet occupied in any ordinary sense. The facilities manager immediately checked the office access logs. No employee badge entries had occurred since the contractors left earlier that day. The suite was otherwise empty, yet the phone had gone active long enough to place outbound signaling into the network. Somewhere inside the system, the extension was being used or was behaving as if it were. When the company finally moved staff onto the floor, the workstation tied to the number remained intentionally unassigned. The phone was boxed, the port disabled, and the desk left empty. That practical decision should have ended the case. It mostly did. No more voicemails arrived from the future, and no live calls came through that specific line once it was disconnected. Yet the office still produced smaller anomalies: internal call traces from unused ports, brief handset activations after midnight, and one report from a cleaner who heard a desk phone ringing on the dark floor and found no lit extension when she went looking for it. None of those incidents matched the original voicemail in intensity, but they were enough to stop anyone from treating the earlier events as a one-time glitch. What kept investigators interested was the structure of the first voicemail itself. It had not sounded
clearer than before. "He's in the hallway." The phrase chilled everyone who heard it. For the same reason, there was no hallway. There had not been one for 7 years, yet the voice on the line continued describing movement within a structure that no longer existed in the present tense, as if the fire and demolition had never happened from the caller's perspective. When detectives later reviewed the call log, they found the routing itself was almost as troubling as the audio. The incoming call had not come from a cellular tower, nor from any currently active landline registered to the parcel. Instead, it appeared through a legacy routing path once tied to the house's original wired service, a system line that should have been disconnected entirely after the fire investigation closed. Utility maps confirmed that the copper pair serving the residents had been cut years earlier and abandoned during street repairs. In theory, a call from that number should have been impossible at the device level and the network level. Yet the emergency center had received it cleanly enough to display the correct historical address and keep the line stable for nearly 9 minutes. Because no one could find a living caller on the lot, officers widened their search to surrounding properties. Neighbors on both sides were interviewed that same night. One recalled the old fire clearly and swore no one had lived on the lot since. Another reported hearing nothing unusual until the police arrived. A third, however, offered something stranger. She said that some nights, usually after midnight, she still thought she heard a phone ringing from the empty property, faint and distant, like a sound carrying from inside a closed house rather than across an open lot. She never reported it because it stopped quickly, and because, in her words, you can't call the police because an empty place sounds occupied. That sentence stayed in the case file longer than anyone expected. Archived fire investigation records were pulled before sunrise. The original blaze had started in the back hallway of the house, according to the official report, spreading rapidly through older timber framing and interior insulation. Only one resident was listed in the final paperwork, a man who died in the fire after neighbors reported he went back inside looking for someone else. No second body was ever recovered. At the time, investigators assumed the witness statements were confused with smoke and panic. But the emergency file also contained an earlier notation from the same address, 2 prior calls over the previous month reporting someone breathing on the line and then whispering before disconnecting. Those calls had been too brief to act on. No one connected them to the final fire afterward. The property photograph taken before demolition became one of the most examined images in the entire case. It showed the front of the house intact from an earlier tax assessment year. Narrow porch, 2 windows, a hallway aligned slightly left of center behind the front door. That hallway mattered because the caller on the 911 line had described someone standing in it. Investigators compared the layout